Hello everyone. Thank you for coming today. I think it was not an easy choice. There are a lot of talks at the same time as this one, so thank you very much. We'll be talking about Drawables, but before that, I wanted to talk about a little bit about myself. My name is Marcos. I'm from Brazil, but live in Canada since February of last year, so it's been almost 2 years. I've been Android developer since 2.3. I had the lucky to not get it 2.2, 2.1 very much. And I led an enterprise tablet app for Sony. It's being used now in the whole US. And now I do Droid stuff and apps for startups and some Quebecers companies in Montreal. A little bit about the company that I work for, it's Mirabo. We are a very nice company. We do, as I said, some apps for startups, for Quebecers companies, and we're growing. It's the fastest growing company in Canada. So if you have some curiosity, you can check it out after life@mirabo.com. So Drawables. Before we start, I would like to ask who was in the Drawables session yesterday? Someone? No? Nice. They talked a lot about custom Drawables. It's very interesting. It's an advanced topic, and it was a very nice presentation. What we're going to do today, we're going to kind of play with Drawables a little bit so we can have nice apps. So just a little bit of an overview. Drawables is a general abstraction for something that can be drawn. Unlike a view, a Drawable does not have any facility to receive the event or the right to interact with the user. That means that there is no measure passes and anything like that, so Drawables are cheaper to be drawn and faster. What are we going to see today? We will see how we take advantage of Drawables so we can reduce the amount of resources in our applications. So we can play with shapes and rectangles and all those stuff. We'll go step by step through UI cases that I'm going to show you, and we're going to see how we can develop it in a very nice way and easy way without touching any Photoshop. And we'll also play a little bit with tint, so we can, with only one resources, have a lot of colors different for itself. And finally, we'll see more cases where we can use Drawables, but we're not going to get deep into it because we don't have much time. So let's just go very quickly through what is a shape drawable. So drawable that draws primitive shapes. In XML, I can say corners, gradient, padding, solid, stroke. And in code, using those three classes, we can play with it a little more. So those are the kind of shapes that we have. Some of them. We can have an arc shape, an oval shape, a path shape, where you can draw stuff, which is very nice. So we can draw, for example, the logo of the company and put it in a loading. It works pretty well. And if we take a look at the oval shape implementation, for example, we can see that it's pretty simple. We can have on XML a shape, and we can set the color, we can set how much width the stroke will have. So the result of this code, for example, will be that oval shape. And in code will be like that. We're gonna have to play with a little bit with its paint. So we can set the color and we can set the stroke. We could also say that it's fill. If we say that it's fill, we would have a result a little bit like that instead of stroke. So it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty easy, and we don't need any Photoshop to do it, but I mean, this doesn't get that. So let's see our first UI case, right? So I have this interface on my Android. I have this button, and when I click on it, I go to another activity where on my action bar, I have the same icon, but I don't have the circle around it. So I have my first resource, it's an email resource, right? And what I have after would be what I would call an icon email rounded, right? I can do that, right? But that means that I would have to play with the resource, and I don't like to play with it. My thing is code, right? So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do, we're going to take a look at layer list drawable, where we can play with different drawables to create a new drawables programmatically. So I think you can already see how this is coming and where this is going, because before I could create a shape drawable that it's an oval one, it's a circle. That means that I can have a drawable that is only a circle, and then I have a drawable that is my actual icon. So with the layer list drawable, I can manage an array of other drawables. These are drawn in order, and the elements with the largest index will be drawn on top. So in XML, it would be something like that. I have a layer list, and then I have the items, and I put in the order that I think it's more important, and which one I want to be on top of the other. So basically, the last one on this list is going to be in the top of the other. So to achieve my resourcer with a circle, I could do a layer list, and on the first item, I can say it's my circle. I can say it's my shape with the oval shape, and I can say how big its stroke, and I can say it's which color it is. I can say it's green. After that, I can say that I have my drawable, and this I can save on an XML file, and I can just use it. So at the end, I still have only one resourcer, right? But I have two different images that I can set for my buttons, I can set for my text views, action bar icon, and all those stuff.
Okay.
So, sorry?
I got something to tell you.
Is it someone asking something? No? Okay. So if we take a look here, we have the first item. It's what we call shape. We could have a rectangle. We could have anything else that we want. And if we wanted a rectangle instead of a circle, we could have where we say Android shape oval, we could say rectangle, and it would be just a rectangle. It would be perfectly working very fine. And then I say, which is my resourcer, where resource, in this case is my content email. So let's go to our second UI case. Let's get a little bit more complex, all right? So here's our second UI complex. I have many resources now. I have 4 resources. And so, and each one of them is the same thing. When I click on it, I go to an activity where my action bar has the same icon, but without the circle. So, as we just saw, we can create an XML file in the Drawables folder, and we can put a layer list inside of it, right? So basically, for our 4 icons, we would have another XML inside of our Drawable folder with its circle and its last state with a circle and an icon. But honestly, I'm a little bit lazy, and honestly, ain't nobody got time for that, right? We can't be creating XMLs all the time for each source that we have just because we want a circle around it, right? So what we do, we code. So let's take a look a little bit on the shapes that we can work with in code instead of XML. So first, let's create our shape drawable. We call it shape drawable. We can create a method where we can pass a color, so it will be easier for us. And with this code, for example, I can achieve that and this. So if you see, I get a shape drawable, and then I get its paint. With its paint, I'm able to change its color, to say if it has a stroke, or if it's going to be fill. And I can also say with the stroke width. Of course, this is just an example. You will never use a value like that on 4, like you're gonna get to the density pixel. But for example, this works, right? So now we have a drawable with the circle. That's the first step. So the second step, we're gonna have our layer drawable. That's the one that has the items in the order to put one on top of the other. So here, we're gonna load our icon from the resources folder, from our Drawables folder, and then we're gonna get our shape drawable, calling the method that we just created, that we call build shape drawable, and we're gonna pass the color we want. After that, we're gonna create our layer drawable, and we're gonna pass our shape drawable and the image that we want to be there. But we need to pay attention to this because this is very important, because the order in which one you pass your drawable on your layer list is very important. Okay, so depending on the order that you pass, one thing is going to be on top of the other. So basically, it's what is going to be on the back is what is coming first, then on top of the other. It's like doing a keynote presentation, basically. And in the end, we're gonna call second component drawables with intrinsic bounds. If you were in the presentation yesterday, you know that Drawables, it has its bounds. It's a very interesting method that we can say how your drawable is going to be drawn. I highly recommend to take a look at the presentation of Yetta from ATC. It was very interesting, and you will be able to understand a little more how a drawable works. But for now, we're going to set this method where we can say which is our icon. And what I can just call my method build layer drawable. That we can see that before I was returning a layer drawable that has my resources that I just created. And I can set for flights, and I say that the color is going to be green, and then I say that my flight is going to be blue for the flight. This way, I don't need to create an XML file inside my drawable folder for each resource that I have. So I have a more dynamic interface. And again, this can be a circle, it could be a rectangle, it can be anything. You just have to create it, and creating programmatically is very easy. Let's go to our third UI case. So now we're gonna get a little bit more complex. I say you want to bring to your app a little bit of material design. So one of the things that material design says is, let's have dynamic colors. And dynamic colors, like Kevin Grant talked yesterday on his presentation, which was very interesting too. It's something very nice on our application and can really bring color and life to our application. But sometimes it can be a little bit complicated to play with it because you can have tons of resources all the time on your application, right? You want your application not to be very heavy. So what you can do, you can play with colors a little bit using the palettes and also use the tint method. So before getting into that, let's see how is our third example. Now, when we click on the bottom, the color of our icons completely change. What is orange becomes white, and our circle is not only with a stroke, now it's filled. Now it has the full color. So if we pay attention to the animation, we can see now that when I click, the colors make kind of exchange. What was green becomes white, and what was white becomes green. And when we go to the action bar, our icon is white, because our action bar took the color of that section. So now it became a little bit more complicated because now we have two colors. Before it was easy, right? Before I was just creating a circle shape and I was putting on a layer list with my icon and it was working fine. But now we have to change the color of our icon too. What could we do? We could have different resources, right? Now we have this, and in the present state we have that. We could have different resources. We could have an icon email green, and then we could have an icon email white. And we can play the same way we just played, using layer list and shape drawables and all those stuff. But still, for each icon that I have on my application, I'm gonna have two different resources. It's not very much of a good approach. So what can we do? Android L is introducing palette and also image tint. Like Kevin Grant said yesterday, there is a podcast application which is pretty nice. They change their icon colors depending on the podcast. And as you can see, we have the same icons, but on the left they are kind of blue, gray, something, and on the right it's kind of pink and purple, something like that. But it's the same icons, right? They don't change, it's only the color that is changing. So I don't really need to have different resources. So that's why Android L is bringing the tint, to make it easier for us to have very colorful apps. And what we do to apply tint to a bitmap, we just have to call the setTint method on the Android tint or the Android tint attribute for the bitmap drawable and the 9-pad drawable. But there is only one problem with that, is that this is only available on L, and The truth is, we're not only developing for L, actually we're not developing for L at all because it's not released. So what do we do? How can we bring that to prior versions, to our Kit Kat and Gingerbread versions? Well, we're bringing it for you. We're going to show you how to do it. But there is one tricky thing I'm going to show you later. But it's actually very simple, and it was there all the time. I think that what was missing was really the concept of having an application colorful, of, oh, we have this picture, and let's try to put our icons and our components matching the colors. I think it was more the concept that was missing, because the solution of it was there all the time, and we just have to use color filters. And this is a code, for example, for us to tint a bitmap, to tint the drawable that we have. And I want you to take a look at this code for 5 seconds. And there is a tricky thing there. And I want to know if you can have a question about it. And I hope you ask the right question, not the ones that I'm not expecting.
How do you decide which order doubles to use? Destination in or out?
That's the question I was not hoping to have. It's an algorithm, so it's not an Android thing. It's more an image thing. So if you go to Wikipedia and you go to the Android source codes, you're gonna be able to see all the algorithm that they use. It's a math calculation. So it's not actually an Android stuff. It's really an image stuff, right? So basically, there is an example on the web you can find where they apply each port def, and you can see what's the difference it is. But it's pre-image stuff, and I really can't answer your question. But I know this one works. And any other question about this code? Anything that you find weird there? Nothing? Yes?
Why are you creating a new bitmap instead of just...
That's the question. So let's go. If we go back to our example, when we click on a button, what we have... Why it's not playing? Okay. What we have a state press, right? And this state press have different colors and different applications. So to apply that to a button, what do I need? I need a state list. I believe that most of you already have played with the state list somehow. Maybe not programmatically, because this is a very particular case, but for sure in XML. And there is a tricky thing with the state list drawable. And what it is, let's come back. So this is the question that she asked, and that was the question I was asking. Why are you creating a new tinted bitmap instead of applying color filters to the bitmap drawable? And that's a very good question. And I wanted to know too when I did it, why it wasn't working, and then I figured it out. And I'm going to explain to you now. Color filters for drawables, they are applied to the image that already exists. So basically, when you set a color filter to a drawable, it doesn't create a new drawable with the color filter that you set. That's okay for most of the cases, right? Because sometimes you just want to show an icon on an image with a different color set. But for our case, it's a stateless drawable that is going to have different columns in the pressed state and in the normal state. And the problem is, what do we have? We have two layer list drawables that is going to be inside the state list drawable. And those layer list drawable, they have their own color filters. So what we could do, we could set color filters for these layer list drawables, but they would be overridden by the color filter of the state list drawable. So at the end, we wouldn't have the effect that we need, because on that layer list drawable, my icon would be white, and here it would be blue. But this is the color filter that is setting it for the bitmap. The bitmap for both of them is the same. They don't, every time you create a drawable, they are not creating a new bitmap, it's the same resources that you're using. So at the end, you're not going to have the effect of changing the colors on your icon. If you go to if you take a look on the presentation of yesterday from Etsy, and if you also take a look on the C2 Motier presentation about drawables and custom drawables, you will be able to understand a little more how drawables are drawn and how they work. Basically, when we create a new drawable, it is a new instance, but it uses the same resources across all of them. So that's not exactly what we need, because in the same drawable we have two different colors for the same resources. So that's why I'm creating a new bitmap, because I actually need a completely new image. I really need a completely new image with a different color, instead of just changing the color for a simple presentation. Is it that clear? Like, it's clear? Anybody has any questions about it? No? Can I move on? Okay. Does it answer your question?
I think so. I think I'll have to go through your code to try it out.
Yeah, exactly, because when you play with custom drawables, you really see that the color filter is not changing your resource. It's only applying that filter to the resource that already exists. In our cases, we have one resources, but being played by two different drawables. And at the end, we have the state list drawables that's going to use those already drawables that we are using. But this state list drawable has no color filters. So those two is going to be ignored at the end. So the color filter won't be applied. So that's why on the code, we create a new bitmap. So we get the bitmap, we get the resource that we have, and we create a new one with the color that we want. Of course, you will want to cache that, because if you need after the same bitmap with the same color, you're not going to create a new one, you're just going to use the one that you already created before. So probably you're going to need to cache that. But that's what we basically need, and then we return a bitmap drawable. So we also need to change a little bit our shape drawable, our build shape drawable, because now we also have an image fill. So our drawable, our shape drawable, our circle, is not only the stroke that is painted, right? It's not only the stroke that is tinted, also it's filled. So when it's pressed, our image is white, but our shape that is circling it, it's tinted to another color, like the green or the blue or the red. So we need to be able to tell our build shape drawable which is the style that we're going to use. Is it a stroke? That means, is it the one that only has the lines around it? Or is it going to be filled? I want a full circle with the full color. I need to be able to tell that to my build shape drawable at the end. So we need to make this little change on the code that we already had to build the shape drawable. After that, we're also going to have to change a little bit our build layer drawable, because now, again, we have the stroke and we have the fill shape drawable. So basically, when it's stroke, that means when I have the lines circling my image, but my image is tint, that means that I want the color to be applied to my image. I don't want the color to be applied to the circle, the fill of the circle. So what I do, I pass the color to the tint bitmap, so I can create that bitmap orange or green or yellow. There's another thing here. I'm assuming that you have white resources now. Since we are tinting the resources, so now our email icon, or I'm assuming. But if it's not stroke, if the paint style is fill, that means I have the circle with the full color inside of it. So that means that I want my drawable to be just as it is. I want my drawable to be white, even though I want my shape drawable to be colored. And at the end, I'm going to build a new state list drawable, because now I want the pressed to be different from the normal. And that's pretty straightforward. We just create a state list drawable, and we pass the state when it's pressed. I say, okay, build a layer drawable, right? And this layer drawable is going to use my icon, for example, my email icon, and it's going to have this color, green or red or blue. And I want it, when it's pressed, I want my circle to be the one that is going to be colored. So that means that my icon will be white, but my circle and the feel of it is going to be blue, red, or green. And when it's normal, when it's in the normal state, I want my icon to be tinted. I want my icon to be green or yellow or blue. So I'm passing this type of stroke. That means that how we just saw in the code, when it's stroke, I'm going to tint my icon. So my icon is going to change the color. And my stroke will respect that, but the feel of my stroke is going to be white. And then we add that to a stateless drawable. This first parameter that I'm passing is the stage pressed. It's just to say that when it's pressed, it's going to apply this drawable. When it's not pressed, it's going to apply this other drawable. Just like we do in XML, there is no much secret. It's just that we are using code, and it's pretty straightforward, right? So at the end, we have what we were looking for. When it's in the normal default state, we have the circle with the icon tint, green, yellow, blue, or purple. But when I press on it, my icon, it's white, it's normal state, but my stroke, my shape drawable that I created, is completely tinted, it's completely filled. So in this way, I can play a little bit with drawables so I can have a nice app. So basically we created, around 8 different images, and we didn't touch at all with Photoshop, right? So we did all programmatically. So basically the objective of it is we don't actually need to have design skills to do nicer apps today. That's why the apps are getting better. The apps are getting more beautiful, because we programmers, we can do it by code. Of course, if you're doing an app for Android and an app for iOS, you cannot get leverage of everything for shapes and all the stuff. We want maybe to share some icons. But if you're working on your app at home and you want it to be beautiful, you don't really need Photoshop skills, right? You can just play with the shapes and drawables and everything. And that's the point. And the tint is coming on Android L, but that doesn't mean we cannot use it right now. Like that podcast application, it's using it and it's amazing. Instagram also uses. If you were in the presentation today of Instagram and Facebook, they are also use tint on their drawables and their icons, so they can have smaller apps. So in the emerging markets where the internet is not very fast, they can just download it very quick, because they usually don't have the auto update on all the time, because like I come from Brazil, so I understand it well, more or less how it works. And yes, we don't let the auto update on all the time, and we forget to update our apps. So that's important. So at the end, the basic objective of it is, let's have beautiful apps, let's have colored apps, and let's save space on our APK. Let's try to have the less resource we can possibly have. And we have bonus point. I think I still have some time. Okay, I think I do. Launching your Android app in the right way. That also touches drawables. Not as much as we were talking before. That was more about how to play with it and how to have circles and rectangles and color and stuff. But more in a way of, we can use drawables instead of views sometimes. And you don't want to have a splash screen on your application. No, you really don't want. Now in Android, no, look, please, no, please, really don't have a splash screen. It's really not good. It's not Android. It doesn't work well, and you're gonna have a very weird experience sometimes. Like I didn't have time to put on my presentation, but I really wanted to do. If you open, for example, Groupon app, I hope there is no Groupon developer here, but if you open the Groupon app and you press home button before the splash screen finishes, randomly, Groupon app is gonna open again automatically after 3 seconds. So it's very ugly. It's very weird. It's not Android at all, and they are very evil. And it's difficult to implement, and it's boring too. And it is, because it's supposed to be boring and difficult, because they shouldn't be there. They're really not supposed to exist. Of course, if you work in a shop, company, and if you have clients, they will try to fight you. They will want splash screen. They will say that it's branding and all those stuff. But like, try to argument. Like, it doesn't make sense saying that it's branding. Like, the icon of your company is already there on the app all the time, right? And then after you open it, you know that you're in Groupon. You don't need your phone to tell you that you're in the Groupon app, right? You opened it on purpose, so you know that you're in the Groupon app. So in 99% of the cases, they are not necessary at all. The only case there is necessary is when you're obliged to do it, basically, because your client really wants. And what we should really be doing is trying to preview your content. So basically, if you create your app and you just open it, if you have a lot of views and nested views and all those stuff, and it's the first time you open it, it will take some time to do the measurements and to put your view in places. So sometimes what you're going to have a white, weird screen like 2 seconds before your app really loads. And this has been used sometimes for some developers to justify the use of splash screen. So, we're gonna have a splash screen so we can our data and we can load our things before the user really gets to our application. And one solution for that, it's really preview your content. So you know you're gonna have an action bar, right? You know you're gonna have tabs. So what you can do, you cannot create a view and expect it to draw, because this is where it's taking time, is to draw your views. That's why when you open your app, you have that gray or white or black background before your app really loads. I don't know if you already had the opportunity to pay attention to it. So what you can do is you can preview. Like, for example, you can create a drawable, and in this drawable, you can use a shape like rectangle, and you can put on the top the size of your action bar. And then in the bottom, you can put the size of your tab, and you can put it with the background color that you know that you're gonna have when your app really loads. And you set it as a window background of your application. So basically, what's happening is, this is the window background application, and it's a drawable, right? The drawable doesn't have any measurement passes, there is no measurement calculations, so the drawable is going to be just draw. So when you first launch your application, your app, Android, is gonna use your window background. When you have nothing on your window background, usually it's going to use your window background color. So if you're using holo light, it's going to be white. If you're doing holo dark, it's going to be black. But you can set your own. So if you know that every time you open your app, you're going to end up in a screen like this one, that is going to have for sure all the time a tab and action bar red, you can just create a drawable that represents that, without the icons, without the views. And that's what, for example, Path Talk is doing, and it looks very nice. Actually, Path, it's always an example for good UIs. And that's it. So that's a very good tip for your apps. Please do splash screen the right way. Don't use splash screen again. Just to be sure that you're not going to use splash screen. Please don't use splash screen. Please. Your users will be thankful. You will be thankful because you won't have to develop a splash screen, and you may already have a code for your splash screen, but for sure it's not perfect and you don't like it. And if you like it, please start not liking it and don't use it, please. And Drawables are awesome. Why this is called the magic word of Drawables? Because it's really a magic word. You can really basically do almost anything. You can even draw your logo with drawable path if you want, and if you have patience. But you can, it's possible. So as if you were in the presentation yesterday, again, for the fourth time, please, when the videos come out, please take a look at it. It was very interesting about custom drawables. You can see that with custom drawables, you can have the ripple effects of Android L. So when you click on a button, it will grow exactly, the state is going to grow exactly where you touch. And we can have card with shadows. So that's basically Android L. And one thing that you can do that I was playing at home is you can have actually depth on your shadows for your drawable. So this way you can simulate somehow the Z depth that were introduced on Android L. So you can bring that too for older applications from KitKat and Jelly Bean. Of course, you can create a resource that's going to have a shadow and you just use an iPad to apply it. But the thing is not use Photoshop here, right? That's the objective. So you can create your shape drawable, rectangle, and you can say how much shadow it's going to have. And you can do a tricky thing. You can put a lot of shadows on top of the other before your actual rectangle. This way, you can have like Z depth on your card, so you can play a little bit with material design before material design. And you can create masks for your pictures. It's not the thing now to have circle images and all those stuff, so you can play with that too. You can have rectangle images. I don't know why I would want to do that, but you can. And you can do way much more too. Like drawables are pretty amazing. Please use them. And sometimes too you can use drawables when you have views. If you take a look at the City Motier presentation, I didn't put on mine because he already talked about it, but instead of having nested views, layer layouts and relative layouts and linear layouts on your view, you can simply have a shape drawable with your image, right? Instead of having a linear layout with an image view that is going to be in the center and then you have two buttons on the bottom, you can easily use a drawable where you're going to have an icon that's going to be your icon application on it, and then you set it as a background of your activity, right? You don't really need the nested views to do it. And drawables are way cheaper to draw, they're very faster, and they work way better. So they're very amazing. But I'll wrap up. Drawables are powerful, and they can do way more than just load your resources. That's many developers still use drawables only to load resources, which is pretty sad because drawables are amazing. And in many cases can substitute views, or even when you want animations. So when I will share my presentation, I will also put some nice links about drawables, and you can see, for example, how you can use animations on your drawables, so you don't need, for example, to use image views or something like that. And you can play with levels and all those stuff. It's pretty nice. And drawables will be your best friend to bring out to other versions too. So if you want your application to impress people, and if you want to be there, like in the last design scene, you will really need to go deep in drawables and really see how it works and play with it. I believe that's about it. If anyone has any questions, I'm very happy to answer. No?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about the role of the UX lead in which someone is, just laying out screens and, you're not pointing at very How do you see that role changing for
That's the thing. What I believe is that UX and UI people should really be working together with the developers. I think that we are getting to the point where developers can't be only developers anymore. And that's the thing with my presentation too, and with the presentation of Kevin Grant, right, yesterday. Kevin Grant is an amazing developer. He's a developer, but he's always caring about UI and UX. So he understands how those things work, and he talks all the time with his UX team. And that's the thing. We at Mirago, we do that sometimes. So sometimes it happens that we get an interface, and we could be using things differently. And we just talk to them. We say like, oh look, here this is not very much Android, or you can do this, or we can use Drawables. I don't really need your resources. Thank you for it, but I really don't need it. And that's the thing. So try to be friend with your UX UI. He's not your demon. He's your friend. Make him your friend, and that's it. You're gonna have an amazing applications for years and years. A lot of developers really hated UI people, and UI people hated developers because I always say that you cannot do that, but yeah, you can do it. So just be friend with them, and you're gonna have your problem solved. Any more questions? No? So please, I'm gonna be posting the PowerPoints and the presentation next weekend only, sorry. And I'm going to be sharing the code on GitHub too, so if you want to take a look at it and see how it works and what did I do, I'll be posting next weekend too. So please follow me on Twitter, on Google+, and I'm gonna post there when I really finish my presentation and when I really finish the code to be able to post it. Thank you very much.